Welcome to the Smart Charge by Ridergy podcast. This is Claudio founder and CEO of Ridergy. This is your show to learn about all things energy management and smart charging innovation for electric vehicles and fleets. Welcome to Smart Charge. Today's guest is Farhan Farrukh. This conversation begins with ChargeBnB, our charger sharing startup that won 100,000 from the postcode lottery in Norwegian grants for a pilot in Halden. The pilot exposed market and tech frictions. Schneider 22 kilowatt units without built-in connectivity that needed costly on-site activation, older OCPP versions, quirks where chargers showed available but failed in use, late stakeholder approvals, and a postal fleet pilot that stalled as funds ran out. With a 6-person team, the verdict was clear. Thin margins and fragile user experience make sharing hard to scale, something even players like the most advanced charger backends touch only at the edges. From there, we move to Nodes, a Nordic local flexibility market that tackles congestion from trading, not just grid upgrades. Nodes models the grid at node level, from street level low voltage to city scale medium voltage, and every trade is defined by location, price, volume, and time. DSOs can reserve long flex months ahead and call short flex near delivery. In Norway, last season's 100 megawatt hour of availability, about 20 euro per megawatt hour, saw under 10% activation, prompting a new arming mechanism so DSOs and TSOs can stack value from the same assets. We'll link this to real projects across Norway, Sweden, Finland, Belgium, and Canada, with research in Greece, Switzerland, Spain, and UK. The platform runs with a web app for grid companies and APIs for aggregators or flexibility service providers, already connecting 15,000 of approved assets in a pipeline above 50,000, from EV chargers and batteries to heat pumps and commercial sites. That's the journey today. From a sharing pilot, hard lessons to a market model that turns flexibility into simple contracts, clear activations, and reliable settlement. The energy transition faces huge challenges that distribution system operators like DSOs need to face. This episode is fundamental to understand how we can solve this. Let's dive in. Farhan, nice to have you today. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for inviting me.
Sure. Yeah, happy to have you coming from Oslo, and it worked well that you could make it to the podcast studio here in Berlin. That's awesome. And before we jump into detailed topics related to your work, introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, first of all, thank you again for inviting me. So my name is Farhan Farrukh. I've been a global citizen, I call it, because I was born in Middle East. In Saudi Arabia, but then I was actually a national of Pakistan. My parents lived in Saudi for several years, so I grew up in a different desert environment with a different kind of cultures and experiences. Then moved back to Pakistan, did my education there, and then moved to Europe. That's where I met you as well, while I was studying in Belgium, doing masters in energy engineering. And then after that, I moved to France. So did a bit, the second master's there in smart grids and buildings. And then after that, I ended up in Norway. So right now I'm working on flexibility. Really about local flexibility markets and working with a lot of the whole value chain of the energy industry. And it's really exciting. And I think we'll talk more about that.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks. Yeah, we knew each other from the Inno Energy community days. I think we both were quite passionate about that project as well, or vision of uniting sustainable energy change makers. And you were super active as a community leader, and you studied one of the masters as well, such as me as well. So also for the listeners, yeah, that's the background, and I'm happy to have you. I think you are one of the first guests from the Inno Energy community, and happy to have more in the future. As you will see, there is plenty of interesting work that people coming from that community are doing. So you said you came to Europe. First, you said global citizen. What motivated you from your Saudi experience, Pakistan, then come to Europe?
Yeah, so my, as I told you, like my bachelor's was from Pakistan, so I studied electrical engineering. I majored in power systems. So right after graduating, I did went to Saudi. That's in 2016. Tried to look if I would be, back to my childhood living environment and will get a work experience there. But at that time, Saudi was not doing great as an economy, so there was not many projects on the electrical power side. So then I moved back to Pakistan. I found a job at actually a very small company, a startup almost, that was actually doing very technical work. Essentially, they were partners with General Electric, the large US company. So they were installing protection and control system equipment inside medium and high voltage electrical grid stations. So the government of Pakistan in 2017 started to upgrade a lot of these electrical substations. So they had this contract to upgrade them. So then while I was working there, that was super interesting, but it was a lot of technical details that I have to work with. So you design circuits, you're really into the engineering stuff, which has its own fun. But one thing I was missing was the new things that you hear, in the news and also online. What is this energy transition thing happening? And really looking from the outside and never been in Europe, never have visited even before that. It was like Europe was the leader in back in 2017. If you ask any young person outside Europe, if you tell them energy transition or sustainability or sustainable energy, all these keywords, every young person will say, "Oh yeah, this is something happening in Europe." So that was the main motivation to become part of that community or that society where something is happening, which is actually quite important. And then I found this master's with InnoEnergy, which also was combining not just the energy engineering and energy and sustainability topics, but also was combining innovation and entrepreneurship. So that was like a best of two worlds for me. So just getting into the sustainability topic, but while also having this, very much hobby to become an entrepreneur. A naive hobby at that time, didn't even knew what an entrepreneur really means. It was a cool thing to do, but that's how I ended up in Europe and with those two passions. So energy and sustainability, and then on innovation and entrepreneurship.
Okay, and one step back again, because it's also something that is a lot in the news right now, where we are seeing geopolitical tensions here and there, and borders being set by the US, for example, for especially people coming from abroad with their H-1B visa. And I'd be curious to know, like, I think there's not so much light shed into how many people from Pakistan or India and other regions are actually living in Saudi or in the Arab countries there, in the Arabic Peninsula. Like, what's the share of population? What led your parents to move there?
Yeah, that's a very interesting actually question, because my generation has seen actually the global community more connected. It's much easier to move between countries. But back in the day when my parents were, this is like 60s and 70s, that when Saudis, or not even just Saudi, but the whole Middle East had this oil exploration, right? Really, that was the big function in that society that really enabled them to hire a lot of skilled workers. So my dad actually used to work in the public sector of Pakistan. So we have a public company that operates, all our electricity grid, but also all our hydro dams. So he used to work at a hydro dam up in the north of the country. And then like the Saudis were hiring a lot of skilled people because they were really shortage, and they really needed a lot of the new infrastructure to be maintained and developed and operated. And that's how a lot of people migrated from Pakistan who were skilled people to the Saudi. But the same thing happened, I believe, in Dubai or UAE, also in Qatar and Kuwait and all those countries, which are very much quite closely linked. But most of them have one thing in common, was that they had shortage of skilled labor, and the countries which had a lot of population but also a lot of skilled labor, they migrated to those countries. So living there and growing up, I would say like my school was also had three sections in it. So one was a Saudi section, which only the Arab students were studying. Then we had another floor on that school, which was Pakistani section, we used to call it. So all the Pakistani students were studying there.
Really?
And then the curriculum we were following also was coming from the embassy of Pakistan, or the government that was teaching the curriculum that we were following. And then we had another floor on top, which was the Indian students. So they had their own curriculum from the Indian government, which they were following as overseas as well citizens. So it was
Funny.
interesting experience. You had three different layers within the same, I would say, premises of the school. But we will play with the Indian kids from time to time. Also, football we'll play with the Saudi kids, because they were so we'll play cricket with the Indians and play football with the Saudis. So that was an interesting experience.
Funny anecdote. And coming back to Europe after your studies, what did you do?
So I finished with my second master's in Grenoble in Polytechnique in France. So from there I started reaching out to my network and seeing what are the different possibilities to start working in Europe. I wanted to stay in Europe, build my career here and gain some experience. So I had a friend actually who also graduated from InnoEnergy, but 1 year ahead of me. He was working on European Horizon projects. So, European Commission sets out an agenda every few years, and they have a certain amount of funding that is allocated to innovation, research, and also some of the academic related activities. So I joined a company called Smart Innovation Norway, which was a research institute, but a private one, but doing a lot of research with innovation. So really high end of the technology readiness level, which is a term used by the European Commission to define whether your product is in the lab or is closer to entering the market.
Originally from NASA.
Yeah, exactly. So that's something that has been my goal, was to work on creating new projects. So putting a lot of consortiums together, like 16, 17 organizations. This would include companies, universities, academic institutions, research institutions, also sometimes startups. And then all together we will put a new proposal or a new innovation concept for a challenge that has been set in these Horizon calls, which is designed by the European Commission experts. So I would create those proposals, submit it to the Commission, and then you will get feedback whether you got funded or not, and whether if you are funded, then the second role of my job was to do project management, or also one of the projects I did manage was to do as a pilot coordinator. So we were deploying microgrid optimization solutions across three countries, Romania, Spain, and Norway. And then I was the main pilot coordinator for all those three sites. So I had to coordinate with the vendors who were supplying equipment, a university who has developed a new algorithm to optimize their energy consumption, and then with the site itself, the site manager who is operating that site on a daily basis. So it was a kind of interesting multi-stakeholder engagement, but within the energy side, and also then really working with the European funding schemes, and really understanding like this is quite complex coming from outside of Europe, to be honest. But when you start seeing the different trends and different themes, you can start to learn, okay, how does this work? What's the benefit of it? And one of the things that I felt was missing there was that the impact of these projects, because the European research, can go up to a certain level and then it has to end, and then it has to enter the market, because that's where the commercial, interest will take it further and develop some value for the society. And that's where I thought like maybe that is just a bit slow compared to, commercial world. And that's where I stopped working there and moved to the next role.
And the next role was?
The next role was with Nodes, so as a business development manager. So here, interestingly, within my last job, I was doing an R&D research and development project with nodes, where I already saw their platform, and looked at it. Like, it was very interesting. It was a new concept to create new local flexibility markets, which I had a little bit of knowledge, but not really. And I just reached out to my contact there and just asked them, like, hey, this looks really cool, and I'm more interested in really commercializing these new innovations, and your platform is already at the stage which it can be commercialized. So I joined this company in 2023, and still, yeah, been working there.
Okay, and before we deep dive into that one, I think there's one episode that I know that could be interesting is Chart BNB as well, that you could be elaborating a bit as well what that was about. The name is catchy.
Yeah, absolutely. So while I was working in this research organization, or the research institute in Norway, actually one of the things that was really interesting in Norway, and I think most of the listeners will also will catch on to that Norway has a lot of electric cars, right? And that was one of the things that I also felt when I reached there and start living there, is that when I need to get a car, let's get an electric one because you're in Norway. But one of the biggest problem I faced was that the place where I was living, I was renting a home, and the landlord had one electric car charger, and that was for his own car. And then I could not charge on it really with any commercial model. I had to charge, then I would have to manually calculate how much I charge, which was something not really fair for him, and also maybe not fair for me. But really, where I was living, there was a school that was like 5 minutes away, really by walking, and they had like 8 22 kilowatt chargers installed at that school. And the school only works, the people coming there were charging from the morning till the afternoon. The school closes, the charger sits there, and then I was looking at them all day whenever I crossed the school, and I was thinking, like, why I can't charge there? I mean, in 2020 and from there to 2021, I looked at it. There were many of such chargers in a small town in Norway, and then I got contacted by one of my old mates who was living in Netherlands, and he had this idea that in a hackathon, that why don't you do Airbnb of charging? And I told him, like, I'm actually facing this problem in Norway, so this is actually a real problem which you are describing to me. So let's join hands together. Let's create a startup. Become that entrepreneur that I talked to you about earlier. So we created the company, and then we faced the first challenge. That was an immigrant challenge, that you as an immigrant in Norway, or I think most of the countries, until you have lived there for certain years, you cannot create a company just on your own. This was the immigration requirement, that you need to have a Norwegian citizen
Really?
involved, yeah, or a permanent resident. So I was not a citizen or a permanent resident. So we involved another colleague of mine who was that, and he was also bringing some experience of the Norwegian society, and a bit more knowledge of the Norwegian society. So we were three that we started it. And then we realized quickly that as soon as we learned the first keyword, the OCPP, what is that? And suddenly we hit the wall that none of us has the software development skills. Really needed to develop a platform that can allow the Airbnb of charging. That's when I reached out to another student there that was studying in the same town where I was working, and he joined us as a full stack developer. He was also from Pakistan, and he came there for studying, and he had a lot of experience of developing full stack applications. So we became four. So you can already start to see that as a startup, we were like a big team, not yet really validated the problem in a real life market. And that soon became the biggest challenge, that we really were pushing to get the market moving instead of the market calling us, and we were starting to onboard. So we did end up actually winning a lot of the competitions in Europe. So we won actually a big prize from Postcode Lottery. They have this green challenge. So they operate this in 5 countries, and we were chosen the winner in Norway as the best green startup. So we got 100,000 euros of funding with that.
Nice.
Yeah, and we also had some grants from the Norwegian government to help we really build this concept. And in the end, we did some pilots. So we did a pilot with the local municipality of this small town called Halden in the east side of Norway. We were sharing the chargers from 2 schools with the community there. But soon we saw a lot of challenges of having multi-vendor system there. So we had the chargers, the 2-pole chargers of Schneider, 22 kilowatt. First we had to find out whether they had the internet connection at that site, which was not enabled. So we had to hire a local electrician or a networking guy who would go in and open the charger, and he was the only authorized person to do that from the company. Then first that has cost for every charger that we had to onboard, because these chargers were installed by the municipality, and when they installed it, they never had this as a requirement to make them already enabled with the internet. And then so that was a challenge. Then when we start sharing the chargers, we also saw that a lot of the time, at that time, I think it was OCPP 1.8, if I'm not mistaken, that it was like not communicating quite well. Like we will have the charger saying the status was coming that as charging, but actually the customer is telling us that my car is not charging, it's actually just sitting there. So we had like a lot of like bad communication between the two systems. And also on our side as well, I think we were learning how these protocols work and how to integrate them with the chargers. So there were also a lot of those, really delivery challenges. Finally, we finished that pilot. It had some results, but not really great for the municipality to say, okay, we're gonna do this all across, because it also involved the municipality to have a lot of actors to get approvals and a lot of paperwork to be done, which was kind of complex for them. And on the other side, we were also already talking to this to the large fleet operator in Norway called Posten, which is the national postal services.
Right.
And they have had actually some depots which were taking their vans. So they had electric vans that would charge at night at their depot station, take the mail in the morning or all the deliveries, and go out in the field and then deliver those mails. But when they were in the field, those chargers were sitting idle, and the concept again was to share those as Airbnb of charging. We had the approval from the from their management to do this pilot, but essentially all the approvals came so late that we were out of the funding as well. And also I would say also the motivation, because we were quite a big team by that time, like 6 people, but not really validated the product, and everybody kind of felt that there is something here, but is it really moving? And then we all agreed that let's move forward from it, take all the learnings. And I think that's one of the things that I really appreciated, that when you have a failure, or which is quite appreciated in the US, maybe less in Europe these days, but it's really teaches you actually a lot, and you learn so many things along the way that actually you can use in your life later on, which is both from technology, really culture of the team, and also the dynamics of how to deal with customer and do the product market fit, which is a term which we learned quite late, I would believe, as a first-time founders. But yeah, overall it was a great experience, and that has also helped me in this the new role that I'm currently working on.
Yeah, very, very interesting story. Thanks for sharing. Just one more thing on that one. How do you look back at this problem, the fundamental problem you wanted to solve? If you look around, there are still so many chargers that are not being shared. It's a big topic in the industry. What's your view? Why isn't it commonplace? Why aren't there other people that have solved this problem with the same second charge BNB?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. I really wish should be a solution like that. But like you said, there is still a problem that needs to be solved. There are few solutions that are working in UK that last check they are able to scale it to a certain level, but that's really a community approach to that, right? It's not really a very much plug and play solution like you have now on other sides of EMSP solutions or CPO solutions. This really sharing of charger has not scaled. Even though one of the largest player, Monta from Denmark, right? They started at the same time in 2022 when we did, but the founders had really great experience from ex Tesla, and they scaled the platform. Actually, their initial product, the app, had this option of sharing your charger, but over the years, I think they also saw that the profit margins are higher on the other side, where you have this platform approach to connect different systems and different locations. And so their major revenue portion, I guess, is from there. So they still, I think, enable you to share the charger, but it's not really the core business. And I think the main issue that I feel in this idea or this problem solving is the margins. Because if you do a revenue sharing model, which is quite common in the charging industry, then your margins are so thin on maintaining this kind of a platform. And then the second problem with that is the experience, the user experience for the customer. If the charger breaks, it might not be your fault, but then the customer starts blaming your app, and then you start to see the scale not hitting, and you already kind of being have a bad press, and people don't rely on that in the EV charging world, because everybody who is charging their car, they really want it to be charged. Because if you have once a bad experience, in our case, that was the case when we were doing the pilot. If there was someone who had one time the charger didn't start it, and it was not our fault. It was the charger itself not responding. But the customer stopped using our app and got out of the pilot scheme. And that's also, I think, is really important for this idea to stick. So someone has to find a very good business model that makes it to scale, and also have a really good user experience where it works. Yeah.
All right. Now moving forward and looking at the present, tell us all about nodes. What is also there, the problem that the company is trying to solve first?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so the problem really started actually on the concept where Nodes was born. So let me take you back a bit. So Nodes was actually created in 2016 from a concept where the local grid company in south of Norway was facing a congestion issue on a large transformer station. So congestion meaning, just for the audience who doesn't know that, is that you are not able to supply enough power or the energy through your electrical grid because it's almost full. So then they brought together some experts and thought, okay, what is the new way we can solve it instead of putting a big transformer? So they gathered actually a lot of experts from Microsoft and also a lot of the other companies. Even Nordpool was involved at that time, the wholesale market operator. So they together designed the Node's first market design, which was essentially based on the clean energy package in Europe, which already talked about this role of aggregator and prosumers, and also then local flexibility markets.
So the clean energy package, for the listeners, that's the package that the European Commission and Parliament decided in 2021 and went through, that will apply to all member states and involves a lot of things, a lot of regulations and directives that, and one of them here is here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for clarifying that. So that's something is in that clean energy package. In the earlier draft, I think the 2015, the 16 draft, it said that the DSO, the distribution system operator, may use market-based systems or solutions to solve their problems. So this kind of small group together designed this market design and created a platform. And the platform was really designed to be a nodal concept. So that's why the name Nodes comes from. So grid node is a really important concept in the platform, because what you are doing essentially is you are creating a replica of your physical network on a digital platform. So your grid is connected from point to point. So you have a low voltage connection point connected to medium, and medium to high voltage. That's how our electricity grid works. So you can create a similar replica of that in the Nodes platform. And
digital twin, sort of.
Yeah, exactly. You can call it digital twin, or you can call it simplified grid model. So there are different terminologies that are used for it. But in this case, it's really about taking one feeder or one line of your electrical grid, or even one transformer station, and then you can say, okay, this is my child node. I want to have some visibility on this node at this.
A node in this case would be like a line, or what is a node? maybe let's clarify that
yeah,
first.
I think that's a good question. So in our platform right now, it can be anything. So it's really up to the grid company how detailed the model they want to develop in the platform. Whether they want to take the approach of connecting every line, so maybe at a street level, from 400 volts up, or they prefer to maybe start at a medium voltage level, so covering the whole city. So that's really configurable, and we have
So
seen.
we can call it level, sort of. Node would be like
Yeah,
another synonym for level.
yeah, exactly. So it can be like a really low level of the grid, and then you start connecting that low level up on the chain. So really taking each level up, and the concept this enables is that you can really solve very local problems. And that was the issue that was in 2016, where this platform kind of was a proof of concept. So it did actually result in getting some flexibility from the grid, and solving that congestion problem for the electric grid company. Then essentially that
Just here again, just to set the basics and the scene perfect. So the fundamental problem is what you said, congestion, which was already defined, so that not enough capacity can flow through the grid. And you're already going through the solution now, that is flexibility, right? That is delay and defer certain consumption, basically, or production, or reduce the production of renewables. That's the two levers, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So what if I just summarize what Node's platform does is that it facilitates the trading between the grid company and the flexibility service provider, where the concept is that you buy flexibility top down, so really from the grid, and then you sell flexibility from really the assets. So it can be electric car charging, it can be batteries, it can be heat pumps, all kind of assets. So there is no limitation on that. So the objective here is that you are a generation or a consumption asset. You either increase your generation or reduce your generation. So we call it up and down regulation. And then the opposite for the demand. So if you are consuming electricity, you can increase your electricity consumption or decrease. Right. And that's where the flexibility is, right? What you explained. So what we have done in this platform is that as a distribution grid company, to start with, they can really create a locational market. So that's why we call it a local flexibility market, where this grid company can say, okay, I'm facing problem at this transformer. I have essentially two options. One, put more copper, put a big transformer, or the other option is that I can use what is already inside my grid, which is these new distributed energy resources. That's another term, DER, being used, right, a lot these days, which means solar photovoltaics on people's home or on buildings, or batteries, heat pumps, electric car charging. All that is in this term DER, right? So the grid company essentially can do both functions, and that's what we have seen, that they might plan to upgrade that transformer over the next 5 years, because you cannot just build it in a day. It takes time. With all the permitting requirements, the documentation, getting the equipment, tendering for it, all that. In the meantime, we see that there is a lot of companies who are making a business model on where they can actually enable this flexibility. So again, demand turning up or down, or generation turning up or down. And they see this as a revenue stream, right? So that's where we call them as a flexibility service provider. So their function is essentially is that they have
aggregators,
or aggregator is another term, exactly.
In virtual power plant, because that's also a common term. Do you call them like that too?
So that's why we have termed them, all of them, as flexibility service providers. So it can be a virtual power plant, it can be an aggregator, it can be a battery operator, it can be even a CPO, charge point operator. So it can be different roles. Mm-hmm. So we have categorized them as sellers in the market, or call it flexibility service provider, or short FSPs. And then on the other side, we have the buyers, and those are typically the grid companies. So we start really at the local level.
The DSOs in particular. Also TSOs.
Exactly. So we started with the DSOs to validate the concept in Norway, with this the south of Norway DSOs. Then it scaled up to involve also the TSO. And there we have seen actually different concepts coming along, where the DSO and the TSO can buy flexibility using the same platform and using and also then buying flexibility from the same asset. That's also very important to know that, because in the end the physics doesn't change. You have electric power flowing from one to the other, and the other direction you have the battery who's might be injecting back into the grid. Then you have one battery which might be needed by both the transmission level or the distribution. So that's something we have also now seen in our recent market launch in Finland, where both the FinGrid and the DSO in Helen Sakoverko, both are trading on the same platform and are competing for the same asset. So whoever has the highest need will pay you the highest amount, and that's how we have also seen the transmission company.
And so you need to convince these stakeholders, mostly the flexibility service providers now, let's call them FSPs, to make it more efficient in the conversation, and the utilities or the DSOs in particular. Mostly, I guess, is a business case. You have to calculate, okay, how much money can you save compared to copper and transformer for a DSO, and how much money can you make with this extra flexibility source. There might be some cannibalization or other values that the FSP might actually lose by participating in that market, or maybe it's just a value stack. Can you elaborate on these 2 points?
Absolutely. So essentially the platform allows the market to have 4 common parameters between the buyers, the grid companies, and the FSPs, the sellers. It is location, price, volume, and time. So with these 4 parameters, they are actually trading flexibility among themselves using the platform. So as a first point, what we need to enable the market is a grid company to join the platform. So they are currently the prime customers for nodes, because they are the ones that have the job to supply the electricity to all of their customers, and they are starting to see that is being a big challenge in coming years. Some of the countries already face that challenge. For example, in Netherlands, the grid is so full that you might need to wait several years to install a heavy-duty charging station, right, at a highway, right? So they have the need. So that's why they are our prime goal, to first get the grid company on board. So they create that grid nodes on the platform. So the areas where they see they need the flexibility. So it's really a map where you put a signal saying that, okay, this area is where I'm going to open a market, a local flexibility market where I will need services. Then we go on the other side. So as soon as the DSO decides where to buy the flexibility, we can start making that available on our website, so nodesmarket.com. And if you go to Nodes platform, you will see the map where the areas are visible. And then what we are doing is essentially we are inviting all these FSPs to start joining the market where they see location on the map, they have an asset. So an asset, as I described, it can be any type of distributed energy resource or a generation resource. Then once they start to sign up on the platform, the grid company and nodes essentially starts to design the market rules, because these markets, as the other markets, we know the wholesale market or the transmission system operator market, all of them has some rules through which you participate. So these distribution level markets also have some rules. This is where our experience comes in, because we have been doing this now for more than 8-9 years with a lot of different grid companies. So we bring them a very simplified set of rules where the grid company would tell us, okay, the minimum bid size on this market, what do you suggest? We would suggest them, okay, in our platform, you can go as small as 1 kilowatt, and then you can aggregate up to several megawatt. So the grid company might say, okay, 1 is okay, or they might say, no, I think I prefer 50 because I have certain needs for my operation desk. That means 50 should be the minimum size. Okay, we can figure that. Then the second point is that, okay, as a grid company, what do you want to solve? Whether you want to solve the deferring of your investment, so delaying the investments in the grid, then you might want to launch a reservation contract. So you want to launch a long flex, we call it. So a long-term contract where the DSO or the grid company is saying, I will buy flexibility for a capacity and reserve it for myself meaning for the grid company, and I will pay the flexibility provider an availability fee, because they are making a service for me where they are making this asset available. Then this is the amount which is paid to the FSP as a base price, which is normally lower because
Capacity
it's a
price.
capacity price, exactly. And the DSO then decides for the second problem, where they might have an N-1 issue or a real-time congestion issue as they go towards the delivery hour. So the long flex or the reservation is happening maybe months ahead. For example, in Norway or in Sweden, the grid company reserves flexibility for the winter because that's where the grid is really strained. So they reserve this for 3 months or maybe 4 months, the long flex contract. Then as you move towards more the real time or close to the delivery hour, the grid company will start trading the short flex, which is mainly the energy or the activation part. So you have the capacity contract, then you have the activation or the energy contract. The short flex is where actually you have a competition happening. So you can have many flexibility service provider coming in and offering their flexibility, and the grid company looking from their operation desk, they have done their own tools, which is normally load flow analysis they do, and they will find out, okay, at this location I am going to face an N-1 issue. Then they can buy everything in the market. So
N-1 is the day before, right?
So that is D-1. The N-1 is that you are losing one critical component of your grid. So meaning you are getting supplied from 2 transformer, let's say, and one of the transformer got a fault, a problem, and then you only are relying on one. And if that goes, then there is a blackout in that area. So that is a really critical situation. And just for the context for the listener here as well, that the European law actually dictates that the grid company cannot just disconnect people for the sake of it, which is in some other countries it can happen, they don't get penalties, but in Europe the penalties are really, really harsh. So for them the alternative is either, as I said, to build the grid, which they probably are doing on the way, but still get some service from the FSPs and then pay them a good amount. And what is the good amount? So this is where your original, I think, question was as well, that we have seen the prices range different from different countries, and also from one DSO to the other DSO as well. And the reason is that it really depends on what is the situation of their grid today, right? So we have seen that in Norway, the last season, there was almost over 100 megawatt hour of availability contracts that the DSOs bought. So this is not transmission, this is distribution, very local, but they still reserved over 100, almost 100 megawatt hour of the reservation. This was 1 hour each a block, so 100 megawatt hour of that, and they were paying around 20 euros per megawatt hour to reserve. So that was a small portion of money. But last year also our team did an analysis and saw that actually the DSOs were buying more reservation. They were trying to secure their grid, but they were only activating only less than 10% of that contracts. So this season, this coming winter season, we are enabling a new product called Long Flex, but with arming. So what does this mean is that if an FSP offers the flexibility to the DSO, let's say at 20 euros per megawatt hour, they will get that. That is guaranteed revenue. But you will not be armed if the DSO does not need you. So let's say the DSO procured you in summer for the winter from November till February, let's say in Norway, and they are paying you 20 euros per megawatt hour. Then when it comes November, they do their again the load flow, and they see that actually it's not a harsh winter, or maybe we can manage it because we already have capacity in the grid. They would actually release your asset, so it will not be armed, and then you can value stack your asset to the transmission system operator market. And the timeline of this is set in a way that the DSOs do the long flex contract in summer, then D-2, so 2 days before the delivery, in Norway, the market for the transmission system operator, the MFRR market, and also the others, the FCR, others open up. So then if the flexibility service provider does not get this arming signal, the flexibility service provider is open to participating in the transmission level market. So this is very popular, I think, now with a lot of players in Norway right now, and we also are starting to see the discussions happening in other markets where we are operating as well. So the goal here is essentially to really enable the value stacking. and enable a new market, because DSOs were not really buying from FSPs, right? So there was no price attached to it. But now with this, you can actually do the value stacking from DSO, then to the TSO, and then within the TSO, you already have multiple markets, right? And this is where you will get the full scale of all the revenue streams that you get here.
And is there some numbers you can give related to DSOs benefiting from the product in terms of savings? I imagine it's not so easy to quantify the value proposition you offer compared to what they know with building more cables and transformers.
Yeah, this is a very important question, to be honest. And there is actually two things attached to this. So there is one about doing this cost benefit analysis, right? For the grid company, what is the value of flex? Now, there is the other aspect that is also very important, that how the grid companies are getting paid today. Because just for the recap, they are regulated entities, right? And the majority of revenue for them is essentially passing the electricity through their cables and to the end customer, and the end customer uses the electricity, right? And the end customer pay a grid rent or a grid fee, and that's how they get back. They cannot make huge profits on it, right? Because they are regulated entity, they have a societal function, and they need to do that. The current regulation in most of the countries where we are operating, there is a capex model. So the more investments these companies do in the grid to supply that electricity to the end consumer, the more money they get back. So the incentive there is really to put more copper in the ground, and that is also a big
how do you
topic.
convince them?
Yeah, so exactly, and that is a big issue in most of the discussions that I have with the grid companies, that they see there is no incentive for them. However, we have been now seeing the discussion happening on the EU level. There is a policy change being discussed. We will come back to that, I think, as well. But also at the national regulatory agencies, the NRAs, are really pushing the grid companies to think about also OPEX as well as a key component. We have seen the most mature local flexibility markets are in the UK, because the model has been adopted by the regulator there for a TOTEX approach, so a total where the capex plus OPEX is calculated, and then the grid company gets their essentially the money. With this, a change in regulation, there will be a big incentive for the grid companies to not just think about more copper in the ground, but also other services like flexibility. Now, the other side of it, the value of investing in the grid. So there was a study from the Smart N Group, which is a Brussels-based lobby group on demand response, and they have estimated that almost around 600 billion euros of investments have to be made in the European grid in the next coming 5 to 6 years. And the majority of that investment, more than 300 billion, will go to the distribution level of the grid. And their estimate that is that if from that 300 billion, if you could invest at least 10 billion in the flexibility, you would already gain several billion euros worth of efficiency in your grid, because then you will be also enabling the grid to be more responsive to the demand and the generation that is locally present. So that is a big number. I mean, in next 5 to 6 years, you will see this as one of the key enablers. And that is why actually last week I was in Finland, actually the few days back, and the European Commission, one of the representative presented that they are also working on a common methodology on assessing how the needs assessment for the DSOs. And there will be something coming out from the Commission as well, where the common methodologies of how to value flexibility and investments in the grid. And that methodology probably will also serve a lot of the grid companies in Europe, where the flexibility has not yet, been on the agenda. And this is something really, important. We believe that going forward, more the regulation will come in, but also at the same time, the markets we are running, the data is being generated. So there is two things that will come together to really convince the grid companies that have not yet started on this journey yet.
And are there I think you are already active in different geographies. What's your thought on the regulatory? You already mentioned also the UK being very good and favorable to these type of flexibility markets. Are there like countries where you could not operate even if you wanted to? Or how do you look at geographical conditions if you want?
Yeah, so Nodes currently is operating in Europe and in Canada as well, in North America. So we are dividing the markets, the initiatives that we have in essentially two different categories. So one is commercial, where we are getting clients to ask us to procure our platform. So it's normally a public procurement or a public plus private procurement of our platform. So our core markets are currently Norway, Sweden, Finland, Belgium in Europe, where we have already commercial markets. And also in Canada, we have a flexibility initiative, which is slightly different to the market because they are still starting to see flexibility as a tool. So this was a summer flexibility initiative we did in Ontario region in Canada. And apart from that, we are working in the second category, which is the research and market design studies that we do, and or the market design methodologies that will work in that country. So there we are working in Greece with the transmission and the distribution operator there, and also in Switzerland with the DSO there on the Italian side of the country, and then also in Spain as well. So these are the three where we have on the European side where we are working on the research side. And then we also have in UK a project, a community DSO project. So this is where actually two energy communities are actually supplying flexibility to the grid company through the Nodes platform, and that has also been in the research space. So these are the two models where we have been working together, and we have been really now starting to see a lot more public procurement happening of our platform. We already see in other countries. I cannot name them right now because we are in the process. But already in Europe, we see other countries where our platform is being procured by the DSO or the TSO or both. That's also interesting that the TSOs and DSOs are joining hands to launch a market together. And then in Germany, we have been really trying to bring this message forward. We had some European research projects here in Germany with some DSOs, but it didn't cross that. One of the biggest challenge I think has been on the regulation side here as well, that the DSOs have been using cost-based redispatch instead of market-based. We, however, see that it is in the end the value of having a redispatch through market base could actually unlock real value for the transmission system operators as well, because then you can have the transmission system operator, which are multiple in Germany, could also access flexibility down in the low voltage grid. One of the biggest, I think, challenge has been here that the grid companies do fear that their grid will be violated by if someone coming from the higher level of the grid and activating flexibility in the grid, and that creates reliability issues, which is a valid concern, to be honest, because if you have a high voltage company or a grid company that does not have observability in your area at the local level, they might activate too much flexibility, and that creates maybe a reliability issue for the local distribution. So there we actually are enabling a new module in the platform already being used in Finland and also in Greece, where it's called the TSO-DSO coordination module. So what happens is that the local distribution company, when they are creating this local flexibility market, they can already create constraints per grid node, right? So creating limits. So then if the higher level of the grid comes and buys from the same asset, right? If you remember our initial point, you have the same battery or the same charger, but it's now being used for the high voltage service, then the low voltage grid company could already put those constraints. So that allows that initially that fear of having some problems in your grid not there anymore, because the activation component of the platform, we have an algorithm behind that. So the algorithm will warn the high level of the grid, the transmission company, saying that you cannot do that because this will create reliability issues. So this is something I think could potentially enable in Germany as well to market to open up, because here there are many DSOs, yeah, right, over 800, I guess, which is very unique to entire Europe. But if you start to see this happening, there could be a lot of challenges that could be solved with the low voltage or medium voltage grid, and then also would supply the country overall for the balancing as well at the transmission level. So that's something, yeah, we would like to definitely test.
Yeah, I know the constraints you're talking about is a big topic as well when we talk about system flexibility or system friendliness, where indeed there must be some constraints at the cables level and not at only regional but overall systemic level, so that in all these value stacking of the different markets can play along correctly, because without these constraints indeed there will be stakeholders that rightfully are concerned about overcapacity. And what is it that you need to set such a market up? So if I'm a DSO, are there also elements that would impede you to get activated? Because, for example, lack of meters, I imagine.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, actually. So wherever we work and we enable this market, so I explained earlier that it's a long flex, so you reserve something, and then short flex, you activate something. We also have a third product called max usage, which is a kind of a virtual fuse contract, which is a simpler way to unlock a bit more capacity from the grid. But essentially, to unlock this flexibility or to deliver it between the grid company, the buyer, and the seller, there must be a way to validate it, right? So whether you really delivered the kilowatts or the megawatts that you said you will going to deliver, and that is where we have a nodes metering hub. So this is a platform to essentially upload your meter data, which is normally coming from the smart meters. This is a really crucial, I would say, hardware component that needs to be there, because you really need that resolution of the data to be uploaded on the platform.
15 minutes?
Yeah, so normally we have seen 15 minutes. It's I think also the standard size of the meters being rolled out in Europe. So we see that when you have the smart meter penetration going up, you already can start to get more different levels of the flexibility at more granular levels from residential sector as well. But to get started, I think the grid company just needs a willingness. Like someone at the grid company saying that, okay, let's try it out. Let's open maybe a big area, just one area at the medium voltage level. That's fine. Anyone below that can come and provide flexibility. Because in our experience, we have actually seen that when the grid company opens those areas and we start reaching out to the flexibility service providers to come and register their assets, it sometimes is a kind of a reveal of assets in their area which they really didn't knew were flexible. Because they might have done a study several years ago and they found out, oh, we only have maybe 550 megawatt of flexibility. But real data or real assets,
that's also interesting.
Yeah, coming to your visibility is only when you create a real area and you create an incentive. You are really giving an incentive that we are opening a market, come and register the asset. There is no obligation for you to buy your flexibility as a grid company. It's just a signaling that you are opening something and let's connect. Then when the asset is registered and the meter points are uploaded, that's where we have seen that maybe if you don't have a higher penetration of smart meters at all levels of the grid, you might start with bigger assets. You might start with a newly connected battery, which might be at a smart meter point, or you might connect a big industry first, or a big sports arena, for example, because we have seen all types of flexibility coming in, and that might just start your journey. As you penetrate with more smart meters, you will start to see more residential flex and also commercial flex coming into your market.
And how, maybe it's a stupid question, but if my knowledge is also that the DSOs, especially in Germany, haven't lots of smart meters in most grids and at medium and low voltage. How do they actually quantify their needs or flexibility needs to be then able to open this market in the first place?
Yeah, so there is two ways essentially they can do the assessment, right? Either they can go through the smart meter data and doing the studies through there, through that aspect, which is not available in Germany at most of the grid companies. Then the other side is that they might go through their SCADA systems or the distribution management system, the DMS systems. This is where they would essentially have these systems installed by big players in this space,
Like Siemens,
like
Schneider.
Siemens, Schneider, GE, and also new companies coming in. So they would actually connect to the grid company's local operation desk control system, which is traditionally, has been a very simple SCADA system that is just getting the data from their substations. But now, as we see that there is a lot more innovation happen on that area. So now we have more modern systems where they can actually, with the data that is coming, they can actually really do accurate forecast. They can actually predict at different levels of the grid what will be the overload coming or when it will be coming. So they can already do that need assessment with those kind of tools on the grid side. And many of the grid companies already have such systems, either not fully deployed. So there are modules of these. So maybe it's not at 100% fully deployed, but they might be at a 50%, and that still will give them a lot of visibility of the issues that are coming. Because remember, if they have a blackout, they have a huge fine coming, which is not what they need. So they already are investing in these tools to actually get that visibility, that where we are getting red, right, in terms of the capacity of the grid. And so that could already help them start this journey. Yeah,
and I understand it's at the substation level, for example, in Germany, but as there's not so many smart meters, like compared to other countries, you cannot go much below that in terms of visibility.
Yeah, exactly. So there is a challenge on going below that. But we have a partner in Germany, Smite, actually, who has been able to unlock a technology with installing sensoring data on the low voltage feeders. And actually, they are able to bring that observability also from the low voltage grid. And surprisingly, their biggest market is Germany. So they have actually several customers who already have deployed those low voltage observability equipment and the software with it. So there is, I think, a lot of control and visibility on that side. I think that the challenge has been that there is not much motivation to go towards the market-based flexibility, and it's probably also because there had been few trials in the past which had not been successful because there might not have been enough liquidity at that time. There might not be many new aggregator companies that were really bold enough to build those technologies and those business models. So that has had, maybe I'm speculating here, but what I've heard so far from the market in Germany is that those trials didn't really made a big success sound, and that resulted now in not going towards a market-based approach towards flexibility.
Yeah, and talking concrete projects, which ones are you particularly proud of?
I would say that I'm proud of all of them, but our biggest market, with in Norway, which started with one DSO, as I told you, in 2016 and 18 and 2022. Scaled to the two largest DSOs in Norway, and now it covers actually 8 of the largest DSOs. So it scaled up to almost 2/3 of the meter points of Norway. So that is a very large area that is being covered on the low nodes flexibility market. And then also I think in Gothenburg it's very interesting because that's a very small area for a flexibility to be open. But the grid company there, together with the local grid company in Molndal, so these are two small towns in Gothenburg and Molndal, the two grid companies have been able to run the market for 4 seasons now, 4 years. So every winter season they run a market, and they have been able to attract over 30 flexibility service provider in just those small areas. And they have really interesting flexibility. They have coming from EV chargers, batteries connected to heavy duty charging, but also there was a trial of V2G with Volvo there being present in Gothenburg. So they're also enabling price signals from the DSO, but also then allowing the commercial companies to test new technologies and really validate whether they have a business case. If they tomorrow, let's say Volvo launches V2G for all their customers, then if the grid company is willing to pay this much for that, then there is a business case that they can enable. So there is really interesting local players that have contributed to that market. And recently we in Finland, we launched the first TSO DSO coordinated market, where both Fingrid and Helen I mentioned buying in the same market area, which is very unique because it was never done before, because the TSOs always had their balancing markets, and they never wanted to involve the DSOs in their markets, because the scale is bigger in TSO level. But this trial is really about solving congestion locally, but also at the connection point to transmission grid. And it was very interesting, the Finland Flexibility Day we hosted actually 2 days back, where TSO Fingrid is mentioning that the queue of connecting is almost to 70 gigawatt being requested at Fingrid network in next 5 years or so. They have to deliver that, and this is a big rise. And this 70 gigawatt is the capacity being asked, and then there is terawatt hour of energy that they have to deliver in next 5 to 10 years. So you can imagine the scale of the electrification and the things happening there. So if they don't really have data from these kind of local flex market and coordinating with the local distribution, they might be too late if they start it in 5 years ahead. So that's really interesting. And I think I will quickly also mention another one in Fluvius in Belgium, because they have taken the approach of really what you were asking, like what's the value of flex. So they have taken the approach of really defining 6 core parameters and really going from societal value of flexibility. So they are really engaged in making that market so it actually enables a real big value for the society overall. So I mean I'll just stop here, but there are other initiatives as well which have been really interesting over the years.
And let's talk also DSO coordination. I think that's also a topic that you address, because it's not it doesn't go only from the low to the higher one, but it goes horizontally. So
yeah, this is something because the concept is the same, right? So if the low voltage grid company, the local DSO, has some constraints at their level, but they have maybe a DSO that's a regional DSO above them, that does not have visibility to the local DSO and who is connected there, how much flexibility they have and all that. So we have actually in Euroflex, the Norwegian flexibility market, actually 2 DSOs, LV and Norgesnet, who are actually doing this DSO coordination, where the nodes platforms, again, architecture of child-parent grid node concept is being used, where the local distribution company is inviting the flexibility providers who are connected to their level of the grid to come register assets. The smart meter data is also being connected there. And then the flexibility, if it's not needed to the local distribution company, is being aggregated at a higher grid node and being offered to the regional DSO. So the regional DSO is able to also access the flexibility from the local one. But if the local one needs on their own, they can also just use it themselves and also define the constraints if they have issues with those higher volumes being procured. The other example we had was in Stockholm. We did a project a few years ago where the 2 regional DSOs were buying flexibility in each other of their areas. And then what they were doing is that they were also putting or they were coordinating with the transmission system operator, where if one of the DSO buys in the other one's area, then the transmission system operator will be able to create a higher limit of their temporary capacity subscription up to the TSO level. So the connection point to the TSO, they will automatically increase their value there and decrease for the other one in the other area, and then vice versa for the other case. And this was also interesting because then upstream to the TSO, they were already paying the same amount. But if they haven't coordinated, anyone who is activating more in the up direction or increasing the limit up to the transmission, they would have to pay extra fee to the transmission system operator. And this is a very concrete business case again for them in Sweden, primarily because the regulation is like that. The local DSO has to pay up to the regional DSO some fee if they exceed their peak capacity every year. So they have a defined limit every year of the peak. And then the regional DSO has to pay up to the transmission system operator. So there is already a business case where you can, if you just keep your peak below that, by buying flexibility, you're already saving as a distribution company. And I think this is also something I have heard from the German DSOs, that they also have to pay. Maybe you already know about it, but upstream as well, if they exceed their peak limit. So there is already a business case where you already seeing your peak increasing because there are people more electrifying, more connections being done. So you could already have some flexibility contracted. And that's where our max usage contract has been really interesting, because then you are saying that, okay, I have a 10 megawatt connection, but my peak as a battery operator or as an EV charging station is maybe 7 in megawatt. So the other 3 I can rent it back to the grid company, and the grid company can use this either to reduce the cost upstream or to issue new grid connections to the new customers that are waiting in the queue. So that has been also something some of the distribution companies are using.
And let's talk more from a product angle. How can I imagine the product being used by these FSPs and the utilities? Is it a very much API first product, or is it is there like an app, web app, or yeah?
Yeah, good question. So it is available both on the web as a web app, and also on the API, because we are working with 2 different stakeholders here. We have the grid companies who have been used to working on the web apps or the applications over the years. So their staff is really trained, and they have capabilities to use the web application on a user interface. So that's why the user interface has been one of the main focus for the application. But we are actually I would say very much capable over the years to develop the API for the flexibility service provider, because one of the early trials that we did in Norway, one of the main motivations was to bring residential flex into the market. And if you are working with an energy retailer who is also maybe an aggregator, they are saying that they know how much flex they can enable, but they cannot do it manually. They have 1,000 household. They would aggregate and provide you flexibility.
Yeah.
Then you really need the API for it, right? You cannot go one by one on clicking.
AI,
Yeah, exactly.
That would be ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why the API has been developed over the years, and this is very interesting mix, because on one side the buyers are maybe using the application, and then on the other side the flexibility service providers are using API to trade. But it's not a must. So you don't need to do the API. You can already start by just on the UI. But we have seen that with the maturity, the flexibility service provider, they prefer the API.
And what are regulatory trends that you're particularly interested in? I think you already hinted upon a few, but
yeah, one of the main ones that I'm really interested is the EU demand response network code that is coming in next year, and then being finalized in the year after, with the which will be also something that all the member states in Europe have to look at and have to adopt in different shapes and form. But that network code for demand response, one of the main motivations that we have been contributing towards it is to enable the local flexibility markets for the distribution. Because as we discussed very early in the beginning, that the clean energy package didn't really mandate it or really put it clearly that the DSO should use this. It said you can use it if you really want to, but it's not a must. So that's something I would be really exciting to see if they really put it in the final wording, that is something that should be used first. Because if you use it first and you see it doesn't work, fine, then you can go to your other solutions, disconnecting with flexible connection agreements or dynamic grid tariffs. And there are a lot of other tools which are fine, by the way, because each of the grid company might have a different need based on their grid needs. So this is something I'm really excited about if that comes out and how the market shapes. But also I'm also quite interested to see how the overall landscape around climate change, and now we hinted earlier that the geopolitical level as well in the US is now a different focus, but Canada is taking a big leap forward. So the Ontario Energy Board is already looking into flexibility. So they are really looking into benefit cost analysis, which is a way also to analysis of what is needed by the grid company company before they invest in the grid. And then connecting to that, they have a new regulation there called non-wires alternatives, so NWAs, which was also something that they want to really promote flexibility for. So it's a lot of things, I think, happening in different regions, but these are the two I would say are really interesting to see, because as soon as the shift happens, from climate change discussions to non-climate change discussion in one region, then the capital starts moving right towards other countries where the climate focused groups will like to invest. And that is why I already seeing and talking to different flexibility providers where they are seeing a lot of capital coming in Europe, also in Germany, where batteries are being built, and a lot of big projects are being done, like several of tens of megawatts or hundreds of megawatts now. In UK it's already the case, also in Germany I think there are a lot of projects underway.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, so that is also something I'm really excited that this will help the flexibility, because you will have more capital deployed, more assets being enabled, and then what you need the markets. You need multiple markets to make that return on investment, and that's something one of the bio.
And how do you all hinted upon it right now, how do you position yourself compared to other forms of DSO flexibility, like dynamic tariffs? We have here in Germany this new law, the ENVG 14, like the energy law 14, that tries to solve the congestion via this more dynamic tariffs. Is that that approach worse compared to a market, or in which way?
Yeah, so I would say they both coexist, to be honest. So it should not be one or the other. This is something I think is quite clear in Norway. We also have a step-by-step grid tariff. There it's already existing. With our smart meter rollout, you can already have that. So in Norway, if I'm paying my electricity bill, if I'm above a certain peak, with my average, 3 averages, I think it's taken over a month or certain time period, then if my peak exceeds that, then I'm on the next step. So my tariff goes up and up. So it's like step by step tariff. Even though there the market is already being used as well. So in my view, I think both can coexist, and it should be, because if you consider the situation where everybody plugs in their EVs at night, and you might have a dynamic grid rent at a very high value, then everybody stops doing that. Then the grid rent might be lower, but the aggregator who has already scheduled them has a big loss, and they might have taken a position with their energy supplier on the balance responsible party as well, so they might lose their money there. So there is just not one solution for all, because if you have both present, you might lose some revenue from one area because everybody has stopped their charging because of higher grid rent, but on the other side you might gain something from the flexibility market. So there is I think possibility for both to exist, and it should be that way.
Yeah, very interesting. Also a bit complicated.
Yeah.
That's it's. I think mathematically, from an optimization standpoint, trying to optimize very many different things and markets at the same time, at least from what I did as an analysis, gets quite complicated. It's not non-linear, multi-criteria, multivariate problems are not the easiest ones to solve.
Absolutely. You can model all day the grid, but the reality will always be the different. I think that's the reality here.
Yeah. At least with with your market-based mechanism, for sure, it sounds like a very sophisticated method to try to solve congestions compared to a tariff maybe, or having both seems like a Swiss Army approach is better to solve this important issue, which is probably one where the energy transition might be very jeopardized. And as you say, there's like different sources of flexibility, batteries coming, and of course EVs and others that have been already deployed, the production that could be curtailed, which obviously is not the best. So which source of flexibility do you think yield the largest potential for especially for DSOs?
Yeah, so I think There is definitely in our data that we see in the platform. So we have already quite over 10,000 or 15,000 assets that are approved. So meaning they are not waiting to be registered. They are actually approved by the distribution grid company, so they can start trading and they can supply flexibility. If I add also the not approved or pending or that still to be connected, then it will go way above 50,000 or maybe over 100,000. So there is a lot more assets that are in the pipeline, I guess, to join. So we have seen that the EV charging or smart charging is quite easier to supply as a flexibility. So I think that really works nowadays. From both the flexibility service provider, they can really plan it quite well for the end consumer with their apps or whichever solution they have, and then the grid company, in the end, they just need that peak period to be lower, so the grid, when it's congested, they can reduce something, and that really works well. We have last I checked, if I'm not mistaken, almost 10,000 from 15,000 the EV charging. This also includes a lot of residential, which is charging box as well, but there might be some which are also the EVs as well themselves, because you can also change or set the state of charge from the car as well. So it's a mix there. And then we have seen that a lot of the players have started, especially on the battery side. Batteries being really reliable on delivering flexibility, and then the value stacking there with multiple markets is really the thing to do with the batteries nowadays. So we see that the batteries that are being deployed just as a flexibility resource, they are quite reliable, and they can also supply for the DSO, but now also to the TSO as well with this. I explained the long flex with arming concept. Recently, we also seen the batteries being deployed together with heavy-duty EV charging on highways in Norway. So where the battery's main function is to provide that extra juice to the EV charging station when people are traveling for vacations. And it's a very small time period throughout the year, but the rest of the year this battery is just sitting. It's a resource for the customer who has invested in it. So now we see that a lot of technical aggregators who have clever algorithms and different mechanisms, they are able to hedge that battery both in the DSO market by creating this virtual fuse contract, the max usage. So they get some revenue from the distribution company, the DSO, and then the rest of the below that peak that they have set, they are able to leverage it in the TSO market as well. So really getting best of both worlds for those assets. But still, the main function when for example in Norway, the summer, people are going to the cabins, they are stopping at these heavy duty charging stations, the battery could do its job as well. So that's very interesting as well, we have seen. And then we have seen a lot of demand response assets as well coming in. Some of them are aggregated as well. So some of them are maybe it's your it might be a greenhouse directly providing a demand response. We had some fish farms as well that were in Norway joined the market. And then you might also have some residential flex, which is then aggregated basis as well. So it might have a EV charging at your home, but might also have a heat pump. And then the end consumer is enabling in the app that, okay, I'm being flexible. And then there are different business models there that we have seen that some of the flexibility service providers are also offering the end consumer some reward, where they are getting some money back on a monthly basis, which is still quite decent to having nothing and still your resource being used. So there is a lot of different assets that we have seen, but some of the ones that I mentioned are quite interesting, and I see them growing day by day.
How much does an EV driver get for this service, for example? If I'm home, I'm giving this service as a
so it varies. So I know that Tibber has enabled this in the app. So as a Tibber customer, you can be offered grid rewards. So if and then it's Tibber's job to maximize the value stacking from that EV charger of mine to multiple markets. So they manage it either in the DSO market, or if they think that's maybe not valuable for them, they might value stack it in different TSO markets because they are already pre-qualified, or they might also do essentially arbitrage in the wholesale market as well. That's also also possible. So they would return maybe it varies. So it's between 3 kroners in Norway, to Norwegian currency, to maybe 10 on a given day or a week. And it's also not static. So it's not a guaranteed value, but it's something that you get over the time. And maybe some of the people might get a lot more because they might have 2 big cars that are charging at their home, and they might have a bigger home. So right now, I think in the app, last I checked as a customer of Tibber, that you can only do with smart charging, but I think they are also promising now with the heating as well. So if you have a heat load as well, they will combine both, and then they might offer you higher grid rewards, because then they essentially have more flexibility per customer.
But how does it work in the case of Tibber? Because they have, if I remember correctly, always a dynamic tariff. So as a end user, I would enable then Tibber to start charging not only at the lowest spot tariffs, but in combination with the other things. So, and I don't have to worry. So, and at the end of the day, the bill reflects both the spot, and it should be not, if I was charging at the spot price that is higher than what I could have charged if I hadn't activated the grid rewards. Normally it would still be lower, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So they promise you, the spot price charging. So at the lowest price of your car. So as for the energy cost for charging your car will be the lowest. But then if you enable grid rewards, essentially what I understand, this might be their proprietary knowledge, but what I understand is that they would be able to use these multiple flexibility markets, either the transmission or the distribution, and then essentially use their value stacking algorithms to provide me extra money, which is the grid rewards. So the spot price is to have the cheapest charging for the car, which and the comfort is there that you will get the car charged at the end of the day, right, if you keep it plugged in. But then the grid rewards is the cherry on the top, which is small right now, but as we see in Netherlands, the grid is so congested, it might happen all over Europe, and it might be the grid rewards might start to go up as well. So that's also, and also the balancing cost is also increasing in every country. And I think in Germany as well, I think there has been a discussion that the DSOs here might have very high imbalance cost in coming years. So if they don't get extra assets from the different levels of the grid. So if you look at that overall picture from the market size point of view, it's starting slow right now, but if you offer the end customer the cheapest charging, but at the same time use their flexibility in multiple markets and then start offering them rewards, this might enable the money of the rewards will start to peak as well over the years.
And what potential do you see for fleets? You already mentioned that you had some touch points with the Norwegian postal services, this type of fleet, but also companies having their own chargers at the offices for office workers. What potential do you see there for flexibility?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, that's a very interesting asset class, or overall the fleets as well, because they have certain needs. In the end, most of the fleets in Norway actually are going electric. So we in Norway, I think most of the companies have a mandate to go electric by 2025. If not, they will be by 2020, by end of 2026. So it's very soon. Actually, it's almost there. So we have seen that the commercial buildings where these fleets are being charged, there essentially it's the one of their technical aggregators or a commercial aggregator working with them to enable that flexibility from their asset, and then it's normally a revenue sharing model most of the time, where the money made on the different markets. So as we discussed, DSO or the TSO markets all combined, then is shared between the fleet owner or the fleet operator, and then between the company that is doing the service. It's different companies doing different models and different approaches. So some of them have direct connection to the car or to the van or whatever the vehicle type is. If it's larger fleets like trucks, then it's normally the the customer who owns those or have leased those trucks has either an energy department in their own company, which is then making a VPP, because they might have a facility, because it's a big truck, it's being charged at their facility, so they might have also solar panels, backup batteries, also the lights in it as for demand response. So their own department might have that capability to do the VPPs. But as you go towards a mid-size, I would say, fleet operators, you start to see this as a contractual arrangement with someone else, and this is different, different models from different customers.
And talking control, actually then reducing and augmenting charge based on these signals, what is are there any constraints by DSOs? In my knowledge, there's also some technologies that are either enforced by the DSO or enforced even by the regulator, where you need to install some extra hardware device that the DSO controls directly. These type of are there these type of constraints? Because as a also startup guy, of course, I would prefer to have more flexibility in the level of decision of what type of control there is, if it's via the vehicle, as you said, or via the charge point, if you talk only charging, or if you actually need to install extra devices that were not really needed from a technological standpoint otherwise.
Yeah, and this is a very good question. And personally, I think the job of the DSO is to maintain the grid and make sure the connections are there so they can connect the customer. It's not their job to know how to control the asset. And that's one of the fundamental principle in the Nodes platform, is that when you do the short flex energy trade, you don't get a direct control of the asset in the Nodes platform to the DSO, but you get a dispatch notification which can be configured over the API to the flexibility service provider. And then the flexibility service provider, aggregator, VPP, whichever company name we use, they are experts in their own assets. Or the asset of their customer. So then it's their job to really steer that asset in the best way possible. And in the end, the grid company, what really they need is essentially either up or down flexibility, right? So they should get that service. If they are getting that service, why install extra hardware, increase the cost overall for the society, because you will be installing not for one or two. If you look at the scale, you might be installing for hundreds and thousands, and then that extra cost is over the time will also need to be maintained. So that box or that extra hardware, that's an added cost to that entire regime. And in the end, you are getting the same result. You are getting that up or down flexibility, right?
Yeah.
So that has been the fundamental principle in the Nodes platform, that we have been always getting this question from the DSO, that we have to operate a very reliable grid. We cannot have blackouts and everything. So that's why we need this red and green button on our desk. We can dispatch this battery or that charger, but we have always been telling them, trust the market, because if you create enough good price signals, you will see the technology coming. Like yourself and a lot of other companies have developed really interesting technology that actually is enabling in the end that up and down of the flexibility. So when the DSO don't start the market, they have these questions. As soon as they enter the market, their next biggest concern is to get the liquidity. So really attract these flexibility providers into their market and get the assets. So the whole discussion about whether it will be reliable or not, that really doesn't come to the stage in most of the markets that I have been talking to the customers.
So the way it's set up now is the way you suggest all the DSOs to operate, which is not install extra devices.
Yeah, exactly. So we allow them to put the buy order in the market, which is their signal that where and which location and how much they are willing to pay for that service. And then it's the dispatch notification sent to the flexibility service provider who has offered that much flexibility at a given price. So the dispatch notification is then essentially the activation signal. But then the logic of how to do that, that's up to the flexibility service provider. So no extra hardware, no extra direct control that is bypassing the flexibility service provider.
So we started with Saudi and Pakistan, and I'd like us also to end on notes. What's the e-mobility? Are you following a little bit e-mobility developments in those countries, and what can you share with us? Yeah, we are very much focused a bit more on Europe here, but we had a nice podcast about Ethiopia that I can also recommend to listeners. So what can you share about e-mobility in those countries?
Yeah, I mean, I think e-mobility overall, or sustainable mobility, I would say, is going on all over the world. So in Saudi, I think if I start with that, I've been following a bit of the development. So the with the Vision 2030 from the government there, they have actually attracted a lot of EV manufacturers. So Lucid, as you know, the big players from the US, they have a big factory there. They have been really the front runners in the Saudi market to develop it. Also train the staff there. So there is a huge shift of really taking the German actually automotive industry model there and applying it in Saudi, but just for electric. So their I think permitting system and everything has been really easy, and there is also probably a lot of investment from the Saudi investment fund being available for such companies who are putting their companies and manufacturing there. Apart from that, they also have launched other initiatives in Saudi on developing the whole value chain, because if you have the car which is electric developed, or a truck or whichever, then you also need the spare parts, and you need the whole industry to come together, because if you just stop at the vehicle getting out of the production line, then the total cost of ownership will never be lower than the diesel or the fossil fuel. So I think that's also been a big focus. So there is a lot of other players that are coming in from Asia, from China, from Japan and other countries to also establish the after sale services of the EVs there. So I think that's very interesting. And I think recently also I've seen that they are also investing huge on power to X, or power to hydrogen essentially. So they are installing a lot of renewables in different regions, because as they have a lot of sun there, and also some wind as well being installed. So instead of curtailing those when time of extra production, they are starting to also see generating hydrogen. And then because the distances in Saudi or the Middle East overall is very large, you are talking about thousands of kilometers. So using an electric truck there is not maybe the most optimal. So there, the use case of hydrogen really works, because then you can really refuel it at certain location, but it might be really valuable for the fleet operator to take the hydrogen truck from one destination to the other at the lowest time span there. So I think that's very interesting to see both different electric and hydrogen being used there. In Pakistan, actually, the market is slow for the electric, but we recently had the large Chinese manufacturer BYD launching in Pakistan with their electric fleet of vehicles actually in there. So they're offering all kinds of vehicles that are also available in Europe, actually the same level of the car and the service there in Pakistan, which is very interesting. Recently, the government had some study, so the being some I would say policy signals as well, and I think UNDP did a study that I looked at a year or year and a half ago, where they looked at the market share in Pakistan, which is quite similar, I would say, to India and Bangladesh as well, where the dominant EV or dominant transport vehicle is the two-wheelers, and if you combine two and three-wheeler together, then you are looking at 80% of the market share for a country of 250 million people in Pakistan. That's a lot, right?
80% of the vehicles.
Vehicles, right? Not the population, but but 80% of the vehicles is two or three wheeler. And I think I also looked at the number there. So that's almost 22 million or 23 million two wheelers that are running on the road as of now. And an interesting contrast to that is that the country is importing all this fuel. So Pakistan does not have huge oil reserves like the Middle East. So this is a big import bill to the country. So if the import bill could be reduced, I think that's something they looked at. Could be a huge gain for the society, where you actually shift your transport from fossil fuel, which is being imported today, to electricity or EVs, and then you can generate the electricity locally with the solar. So the solar return on investment in Pakistan on a household is less than 3 years. Because the electricity cost is quite high there, and if you just put the solar today on the rooftop of your home, you already have a return on investment in less than 2 years.
Great.
Yeah, if worst case, it could be 3 years. And with that, the whole market of solar installation has really peaked. I was just looking at an article, so it was stating that that in Pakistan, the installed peak capacity of the solar rooftops, together maybe with some centralized solar, is almost 4.9 gigawatt of solar. But the whole country's government and independent power plants, everything that was installed in the last 70 years or so, is 48,000 megawatt capacity. So you can already see the 48,000 is coming from hydro, from coal, from gas for the whole country. That's the peak installed capacity. And then the actual use peak, the demand, is only 30,000 or 35,000 in the summer when you have a lot of air conditioning. So there is already a gap of your peak installed and the demand. So if you can reduce that gap where you need to increase essentially the demand, and to increase the demand, the best way possible for the country could be to put electric two-wheelers, because then people will start charging them, the demand will go up, but also the fossil fuel import for the country bill will go down. And in the end, if you also have a home installed residential solar on the rooftop, then you can charge at home, so the convenience will also be there for the end consumer. So I think the policy has been there. I think they looked at the four main parameters. What needs to be done in the next decade to really enable that is essentially the clear policy signal from the government. Also the global battery cost to go down, because it's not a country with high income per capita. So you need the battery to go down, so the vehicle itself is affordable. And then the charging infrastructure as well needs to develop, because that is something also quite lacking right now, and that maybe is also where the distributed charging could work. And then last thing I think they mentioned also was the localization of the supply chain. So you also, again, taking example what I was mentioning in Saudi, which is for the bigger vehicles they were doing, but similar approach of having locally assembled and created two-wheelers or three-wheelers, and then also have the after-sales market, because a lot of these two-wheelers, break, a light's broken or something, so you can get that spare part inside the country. So instead of importing it, because again, 82% of the market that is driving two-wheelers is not really at the upper stream of the income as well. So they really also need not just the lower cost of owning the vehicle, but also lower cost of operating the vehicle. So again, coming back to the point with the EVs, it's always been discussion, the total cost of ownership should reduce. And that's something I think the UNDP report also highlighted, that if this needs to happen, there must be the localization of the whole value chain there.
Okay, thanks for sharing. Is there a last message you have for the listeners?
Yeah, from my side, I think you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn if you're interested in flexibility or the topic. And if anyone from the grid companies is listening from Germany or other areas, so reach out. Start somewhere with your journey of flexibility before it's too late and you are given the stick to do it with the regulation. It's better to trial it, learn from it, create the data, and make sure you are ready for the next generation of the grid that is coming. So that would be my last message.
Thank you, Farhan, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
That was Farhan Farrukh. The Charge B&B story showed that multi-vendor stacks, protocol mismatches, late approvals, and thin unit economics make charger sharing hard to scale, even with grants and awards. The shift to nodes shows a workable path. Flexibility is traded on location, price, volume, and time. DSOs can buy long and short flex, and new arming links DSOs and TSOs value so assets can earn more than one revenue stream. Coordination examples like Fingrid and Helen in Finland avoid conflicting activations using constrained logic and market rules. The platform operates in the Nordics, Belgium, and Canada, with research in several European countries, including the UK. It minimizes DSO hardware, sends dispatch notification to aggregators, and scales via APIs. Assets already number in the tens of thousands. In EV charging, leads due to controllability, batteries bring reliability and value stacking. Households see small but real rewards. 3 to 10 NOx, that's a few euros per day or week via apps like Tibber, and fleet electrification adds predictable capacity. Regulation sets the tempo. The UK's TOTEX model enables mature local markets. The EU is preparing a demand response network code. Ontario is pushing non-wires alternatives. And Germany can unlock more with TSO-DSO coordination and better low voltage sensing. The practical lesson is to start early, open zones, and let trades reveal flexible assets. With clear products and simple settlement, local flexibility becomes both a reliability tool and a cost lever. Thanks for listening to Smart Charge. See you next time and stay charged.